A farmer abandons a sick Mustang in the forest for bears. What happens next will surprise you. The forest felt alive in its silence, a world untouched by time. The golden hues of the setting sun filtered weakly through the dense canopy above, casting long, twisted shadows that danced eerily on the ground. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves, and the occasional rustling of unseen creatures sent ripples through the quiet. It wasn't just any forest. It was one that carried an air of mystery, the kind where secrets are buried, and not all find their way out. The kind of forest that held onto the cries of the lost and echoed them back to anyone who dared listen. Through this dense wilderness, the crunching sound of heavy boots broke the stillness. They moved steadily, purposefully, accompanied by a metallic clinking that rang out in an unsettling rhythm. The source soon emerged. A man dragging behind him a struggling horse, its once proud figure now reduced to a shadow of itself. The man's face was a mix of exhaustion and grim determination. Lines etched deep into his weathered skin told a story of hardship, but his cold, detached expression betrayed no emotion. In his rough, calloused hands, he held a chain that bit into the neck of the Mustang, a creature that had once been the embodiment of wild freedom. The horse, frail and trembling, stumbled with each step. Its coat, now dull and matted, clung to a body so emaciated that its ribs jutted out like the bars of a cage. Every labored breath escaped as a low, wheezing sound, and its hooves scraped against the rocky ground, leaving faint trails of blood in their wake. The farmer paused for a moment, his gaze scanning the dense forest ahead. He seemed to hesitate, his grip on the chain loosening slightly, but the moment passed as quickly as it came. With a sharp tug, he forced the Mustang forward, muttering under his breath, "This is the only way. Can't keep you, can't feed you. Better this than starving to death." His words were cold, but there was a flicker of something deeper. Perhaps guilt, perhaps regret. It was gone almost as quickly as it appeared, replaced by the mechanical determination of a man who had convinced himself he had no other choice. Deeper and deeper into the forest he went, until he reached a secluded clearing. The clearing was unnaturally quiet, shielded by towering trees and dense undergrowth, as though the forest itself had conspired to keep this place hidden. The sunlight barely penetrated here, casting the area in a dim, almost ghostly light. The farmer approached a sturdy tree and began looping the chain around its trunk, pulling it tight. The Mustang, too weak to resist, stood motionless, its head hanging low. The chain bit into its neck, and though the pain must have been excruciating, the horse didn't even flinch. The man took a step back, his eyes scanning the pitiful sight before him. For a moment, something softened in his gaze. But then he shook his head, muttering to himself, "It's just a horse. Just a horse." Without another glance, he turned and walked away, his boots crunching on the forest floor. As his figure disappeared into the distance, the Mustang remained, a lone, silent figure in the vast, unforgiving wilderness. The forest seemed to grow darker, the shadows deeper, as the sounds of his footsteps faded. A chilling wind rustled through the trees, and the faint growl of a distant predator echoed through the stillness. The Mustang's ears twitched, its body stiffening as instinctual fear began to take over. Somewhere far away, the farmer paused, his back to the forest. He looked over his shoulder, the weight of his actions hanging heavily in the air. But he shook his head once more, as if trying to banish the creeping guilt. "What else could I have done?" he whispered to himself before walking away, leaving the Mustang to its fate. The farmer, a man named Elias, had not always been this way, hardened, cold, and burdened by desperation. Once his life was simple but happy. He lived with his wife and 2 children on a modest farm surrounded by rolling fields. The farm wasn't much, but it was enough. His days were spent working the land, caring for his animals, and providing for his family. But hard times had a way of breaking even the strongest of men. A series of droughts had turned his fertile fields into barren land. Crops that once grew abundantly now wilted before they could be harvested. The livestock, once his pride and livelihood, began falling ill one by one. Each loss felt like a blow to his soul, but Elias fought on, determined to hold his family together. Then tragedy struck. His wife fell ill, and the small savings he had were quickly spent on doctors and medicine that did little to help her. Her passing left him hollow, and with mounting debts, he was forced to sell most of his land to pay off creditors. What was once a bustling farm became a shadow of its former self, and Elias found himself alone, struggling to care for his 2 young children. Desperation changes a man. Elias had always prided himself on being kind and just, but as the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, he began to make choices he never thought he would. He started selling what little he had left, including the animals that had once been his companions. The Mustang had been one of the last animals on his farm. Elias had found the horse as a colt, wild and free, wandering near his land years ago. He had nursed it back to health and watched it grow into a powerful, majestic creature. The Mustang had been more than just an animal to Elias. It had been a symbol of resilience and freedom, a reminder of better days. But now the horse was sick. Its once strong legs were weak, and its spirit seemed broken, mirroring Elias's own struggles. The horse had become more of a burden than a companion. With no money to care for it and no buyers willing to take on a sick animal, Elias was left with what he believed was no other choice. He told himself it was better this way. The forest was full of predators, and the horse wouldn't last long in its condition. At least this way, I don't have to watch it suffer. He muttered to himself the night before he led the Mustang into the forest. But deep down, Elias knew the truth. This wasn't just about the horse. It was about his own inability to bear the weight of one more failure. The decision to chain the Mustang in the forest wasn't an easy one, but it was one Elias had convinced himself was necessary. He carried the guilt like a heavy weight on his shoulders, but he buried it beneath layers of rationalizations. "It's just a horse," he kept repeating, as if saying it enough times would make it true. As Elias walked away from the forest that day, he couldn't help but feel the Mustang's eyes on him. He didn't turn around. He couldn't. The weight of his actions followed him, gnawing at his conscience. But in his mind, he justified it. He had no other choice. The Mustang was a shadow of the majestic creature it once was. Once strong and untamable, it now stood weak and fragile, its body trembling with exhaustion. The Mustang's coat, once a shiny blend of deep chestnut and dark brown, was now matted and dull, clinging to its emaciated frame. The horse's ribs jutted out, a stark reminder of how much it had endured in recent weeks. It had been sick for a while, barely able to keep its balance as it moved through the forest. The chain around its neck, tight and biting into the skin, cut off any chance of comfort. The chain wasn't just a physical restraint. It was a symbol of the Mustang's fate, captured, bound, and abandoned in its time of need. Each step the Mustang took was painful. It tried to lift its hooves, but the weight of its body was too much. Its legs shook beneath it, barely able to support the pressure. It could feel the bloodstains on its limbs from the harsh chain, the raw flesh exposed from the repeated rubbing. The horse's breath came in shallow gasps, and with each intake, it felt its strength slipping further away. The Mustang's head hung low, and its eyes, once bright and full of fire, were now clouded with exhaustion and defeat. It didn't have the energy to fight back. It had been abandoned by the one creature it had trusted, left to face the unforgiving wilderness on its own. Every moment felt like an eternity, a slow, painful march toward a fate it could neither avoid nor change. But the Mustang's struggles were far from over. The forest was not just a place of refuge. It was a land of dangers, many of which were unknown to the horse. The growls of predators echoed through the trees, distant but unmistakable. It wasn't just the physical pain of its injury that the Mustang had to face. It was the constant threat of the forest itself. From behind the thick underbrush, the sharp eyes of predators watched, waiting for the right moment. The Mustang was an easy target, weak, vulnerable, and alone. The distant growl of a bear reached the horse's ears, a chilling reminder that it was not safe, not even for a moment. The trees seemed to close in around it, and the cool breeze carried with it the scent of danger. A pack of wolves, silent and swift, moved like shadows through the underbrush. Their eyes glowed in the dim light, fixated on the Mustang's weakened form. The horse could hear the soft, rhythmic patting of their paws, and its ears flicked back in fear. It knew they were close, too close. The wolves were predators of opportunity, and the Mustang was an opportunity they would not let pass. But it wasn't just wolves or bears that made the forest so dangerous. The land itself posed threats. Jagged rocks jutted from the earth, hidden beneath the layers of leaves and moss. The ground was uneven, littered with branches that could trip even the most careful creature. Every step the Mustang took risked further injury, making it harder to find safety. The Mustang stood there, its eyes wide and filled with panic as it listened to the forest sounds. The rustling of the leaves, the snap of twigs, and the unmistakable growl of a predator. It could feel its heartbeat racing, and its body was already too weak to flee. The chain, still wrapped tightly around the tree, prevented it from escaping. All the Mustang could do was wait, trapped in a cruel game of survival. Time seemed to stretch on, each moment dragging out in agony. The forest was not kind to the weak, and the Mustang, with its failing strength, was slowly becoming the forest's prey. But just when it seemed like the forest might claim another life, something unexpected stirred in the depths of the trees. A rustle broke the silence, a sound that wasn't caused by wind or animal movement. Something was coming, something that could either be the Mustang's salvation or its final end. Would the forest's predators close in, or would help arrive from an unknown source? In the quiet, remote part of the forest, far from civilization, there lived a man named Sam. Unlike Elias, who had turned cold and desperate, Sam had spent his life in the woods, working with animals and learning the rhythms of the wilderness. He was known to be a hermit, a quiet man who preferred the company of the forest creatures over that of people. Sam had come to the forest years ago, seeking solace from the turmoil of his own past. He had lost his family in a tragic accident and found himself broken, adrift in a world that no longer made sense. The forest, with its peaceful isolation, became his refuge. He had learned to care for injured animals, nursing them back to health, and over time, the forest became his home. Despite his solitude, Sam was known for his kindness. Animals trusted him, and he had an uncanny ability to communicate with them in a way that most people could never understand. It wasn't magic. It was simply years of patience, understanding, and respect for the creatures of the wild. On the day the Mustang was chained in the woods, Sam had been making his usual rounds, checking traps and ensuring that the animals in his care were well. He'd heard something faint, the sound of a horse's soft whinnying, laced with a hint of distress. It was a cry unlike anything he had heard before, and it pulled at him, urging him to find its source. As Sam followed the sound deeper into the forest, his heart began to race. The forest, which he had known so well, seemed to be hiding something that didn't belong. He pushed through the thick underbrush, stepping lightly but purposefully. He had been in this part of the woods before, but this time something felt different. The air felt heavier, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. Then he saw it. There, chained to a tree in a small clearing, stood the Mustang. Its body was frail, its eyes dull and filled with pain. The once proud creature was now a mere shadow of its former self. The chain that bound it was tight, rubbing raw against its neck, and Sam could see the bloodstains from where it had been struggling. For a moment, Sam stood frozen. The sight of the horse, vulnerable, weak, and helpless, struck him deeply. He wasn't unfamiliar with suffering, but to see an animal in such a state filled him with a familiar pang of sorrow. The Mustang's eyes locked with his, and for a split second, it seemed as if the horse recognized him, as if it knew that help had arrived. Sam's hands clenched into fists, his heart heavy with anger. Whoever had left this poor animal here had no understanding of the value of life. But Sam wasn't one to let anger cloud his judgment. He moved quickly, approaching the Mustang with a calm and soothing presence. His voice was soft, as if he were speaking to a wounded friend rather than a wild animal. He gently assessed the situation. The chain was too tight around the tree to simply yank it free, and the Mustang's weakened state made the task even more difficult. Sam knew that he couldn't simply free the horse and leave it to fend for itself. It needed care, and it needed protection from the dangers of the forest. With great care, Sam moved to the side of the horse, whispering reassuring words to it as he worked. He reached into his bag, pulling out a small set of tools that he always carried for situations like this: wire cutters, a rope, and a small knife. Slowly, he began to cut away the chain, taking extra caution not to cause the Mustang any more pain. The horse remained still, but its breathing was erratic, its eyes wide with fear. It didn't understand yet that Sam was there to help, but Sam could feel the trust beginning to build between them. Slowly, with each precise movement, the chain loosened, and after what felt like an eternity, it finally fell away. Sam took a deep breath, his fingers trembling slightly from the intensity of the moment. He looked at the Mustang, who stood there for a moment, still unsure of its fate. But as Sam spoke softly to it, the horse's posture seemed to relax ever so slightly. It wasn't much, but it was a start. The Mustang was free, but the real work was just beginning. Sam knew that freeing the animal from its physical chains was only part of the journey. Now he had to help it heal both in body and spirit. Sam reached out a hand, tentatively at first, and slowly, the Mustang took a cautious step forward. The trust wasn't fully there yet, but it was a beginning, a fragile, hopeful beginning. The clearing was silent now, save for the occasional rustle of leaves in the wind. Sam stood next to the Mustang, watching it carefully. The air had grown thick with tension, the kind of quiet that only comes before a storm. It was as if the forest itself was holding its breath. The Mustang, though free from its chains, still looked terrified. Its body trembled slightly as it shifted on its hooves, its senses alert to every movement around it. Sam's gaze darted from the horse to the surrounding trees, his instincts telling him that something was wrong. In the distance, the faint sound of branches snapping reached his ears. It was subtle at first, just a small crack in the quiet. But soon it grew louder, more pronounced. Sam's heart raced. He knew what that sound meant. He had heard it before, the unmistakable sound of heavy paws, the crashing of a predator pushing through the underbrush. His eyes widened as he peered into the dense forest, his mind racing. Bears. The very animals Elias had intended the Mustang to become prey for were now heading in their direction. Sam knew they would be drawn to the scent of the horse, weak and vulnerable. He also knew that once a bear's hunger was triggered, there was little that could stop it. The Mustang's breathing grew more frantic, its wide eyes scanning the trees. Sam placed a calming hand on the horse's side, trying to reassure it, though his own heart was pounding in his chest. The sounds of the forest grew more pronounced. The wind seemed to shift, the rustling more urgent. Sam's stomach twisted. He had to act fast. The Mustang's ears twitched, and it took a step backward, bumping into Sam as it sensed the growing danger. Sam's pulse quickened. He needed to get the Mustang to safety, but the forest wasn't a place for flight, not with the bears so close. His mind raced for a solution, but the sounds of the bears grew louder, closer. Time was running out, and then, with a sudden, terrifying roar, the first bear appeared from the trees. It emerged like a shadow, its massive body moving with surprising speed. Its eyes locked onto the Mustang, and the growl that escaped its throat sent a wave of dread through Sam. The bear was big, its dark fur matted from the forest's undergrowth. It was hungry, very hungry, and it had found its target. Sam's heart dropped as the bear began to lumber toward them, its movements slow at first, but unmistakably purposeful. The Mustang's eyes widened in fear, its body trembling uncontrollably as it backed away, pulling away from Sam. The danger was clear now. The bear was coming, and it wasn't going to stop until it had what it wanted. Sam's first instinct was to protect the Mustang. He couldn't let the bear attack, but he was no match for such a powerful creature. The bear was easily 3 times his size, and the adrenaline coursing through Sam's veins only made him realize just how outmatched he truly was. In a split second, a second bear appeared, its massive body emerging from the thicket. The 2 bears now circled the Mustang, their eyes locked onto it like prey. Sam's throat tightened as he looked between the bears, trying to figure out a way to stop them. The Mustang, already terrified and weak, let out a distressed whinny, its hooves scrambling on the uneven forest floor as it tried to retreat. But it was trapped, caught in the clearing, nowhere to run. For a moment, Sam thought he could hear his own heartbeat over the noise of the bears. But before he could make a move, the first bear lunged. Its claws slashed through the air, its massive form bearing down on the Mustang. Sam's blood ran cold. The fight had just begun, and the odds weren't in their favor. But then, in a moment that seemed to last forever, Sam made a decision. He couldn't let the bear have the Mustang. He had to act, and act fast. With all the strength he could muster, Sam lunged forward, shouting and waving his arms to draw the bear's attention away from the Mustang. The bear momentarily shifted its focus, its ears flicking toward Sam's voice. But the second bear wasn't as easily distracted. It turned its attention fully to Sam, its lips curling into a snarl as it charged. Sam's heart raced. He was in immediate danger, but his only thought was to protect the Mustang, the one creature that had found trust in him when all others had abandoned it. Sam stood tall, facing down the bear with a mixture of fear and resolve. The moment was critical. He had only seconds before the bear would reach him. And then, just when it seemed like the bear would overtake him, something incredible happened. With the second bear charging toward him, Sam's heart hammered in his chest. He knew this was it, the moment he had to make a stand. He couldn't outrun the bear, and he certainly wasn't strong enough to overpower it. But what he had in that instant was sheer determination. The Mustang needed him, and he would not let it suffer at the paws of these predators. Sam's eyes locked onto the charging bear, and his voice came out in a strained but firm shout. He waved his arms in a frantic, erratic motion, trying to make himself appear larger than he was. He knew that bears, especially ones as hungry as this one, might hesitate if they felt threatened by a human, if they were unsure of their target. The bear's massive body came closer, its teeth bared in a snarl. Sam's instincts kicked in, and he quickly grabbed a large branch from the forest floor, holding it out in front of him like a makeshift weapon. The bear, momentarily distracted by the sudden movement, hesitated for a split second, enough time for Sam to act. In that brief moment of hesitation, Sam hurled the branch at the bear, aiming for its face. The bear recoiled, swiping at the branch in confusion, which gave Sam just enough time to back up and move toward the Mustang. He knew he had to act quickly. The Mustang was still trapped in the clearing, panic flooding its senses. The bears were circling, but the Mustang was too weak and disoriented to escape. Sam didn't hesitate. He grabbed the horse's reins and led it, urging it to follow him, hoping that the bears would focus on him long enough for them to make a break for it. The Mustang, despite its exhaustion, seemed to sense Sam's urgency. Its legs shook beneath it, but it moved with Sam, its body responding to his guiding hands. Sam's heart raced as he urged the Mustang forward, taking care not to trip or stumble as they moved deeper into the forest. The first bear, now angry and disoriented by Sam's resistance, let out a deafening roar. It swiped at the air, its claws slashing dangerously close to Sam's face. But Sam didn't stop. He kept moving, pulling the Mustang along with him. The dense forest began to open up ahead, and Sam could see the familiar rocky terrain that led to the high ground, the place he knew the bears wouldn't dare follow. But the bears weren't giving up so easily. The second bear growled, chasing them relentlessly. It was fast, powerful, and relentless in its pursuit. Sam's breath quickened, and every step felt heavier than the last. He was running out of time. As they neared the rocky terrain, Sam spotted a small cave hidden in the hillside, just big enough for him and the Mustang to fit. It was a perfect hiding spot, but it was also their last chance. He had to make it there before the bear caught up. Sam, with all his might, pushed the Mustang forward, giving it the courage it needed to break into a desperate gallop. The Mustang's legs, though weak, responded to the urgency of the situation. The sound of the bear's footsteps grew closer, the growls sending a chill down Sam's spine. With only a few paces between them and the cave, Sam glanced over his shoulder to see the bear lunging toward them. His heart pounded, and for a moment, it seemed as though escape might be impossible. But in that last moment, as if guided by pure instinct and a sheer will to survive, Sam and the Mustang reached the cave. Sam scrambled inside first, urging the Mustang to follow him. The bear, unable to make the leap into the narrow entrance of the cave, stopped just short of it. It growled and paced back and forth, its frustration clear, but it was powerless to reach its prey. Sam and the Mustang were safe just barely. As the bear continued to prowl outside, Sam took a deep breath, leaning against the cave wall. He felt a rush of relief flood through him, but also an overwhelming sense of triumph. They had made it. Against all odds, they had escaped. The Mustang, though still trembling, seemed to calm down in the relative safety of the cave. Sam knelt beside the horse, his hand gently rubbing its neck as he whispered soft reassurances. Though they were both exhausted, the moment of danger had passed. Sam had faced the bears head-on, using his wits and bravery to protect the Mustang. And in doing so, he had proven something to both himself and the horse, that courage, no matter how small, can make all the difference in the face of danger. As they sat in the cave, listening to the fading growls of the bear, Sam's mind turned to what lay ahead. They were safe for now, but the journey was far from over. Sam knew he had a long road ahead, caring for the Mustang and ensuring its recovery. The bears would not stop hunting, and neither would the troubles that awaited them. But for that moment, Sam and the Mustang had triumphed, and the forest was once again silent, as if acknowledging the bond that had just been forged between them. The days that followed their narrow escape were filled with a quiet, hard-earned peace. The cave, hidden deep in the forest, became Sam and the Mustang's sanctuary. With the bears no longer a threat, Sam could focus on the task at hand, helping the Mustang recover from its physical and emotional scars. The Mustang, though once full of fear and weakness, began to regain its strength. Sam spent every moment tending to the horse, feeding it carefully prepared meals, and ensuring it had fresh water to drink. Slowly, but surely, the Mustang's health started to improve. Its coat, once dull and matted from days of neglect, began to shine again. The deep fear that had once clouded its eyes began to fade, replaced by trust. The trust Sam had worked so hard to earn. Each morning, Sam would sit beside the Mustang, talking to it in calm tones, reassuring it with gentle words. The horse, though still cautious, would nuzzle him in return, its instincts starting to recognize Sam as a protector, not a threat. Over time, the Mustang became stronger, its legs less shaky, its breath more steady. The once frail animal was now showing signs of vitality, its spirit rising along with its body. But Sam knew that the Mustang's recovery wasn't just physical. The horse had endured trauma, both from its abuse and the terrifying ordeal with the bears. Sam worked to build a bond of trust, leading the Mustang out of the cave each day, allowing it to roam freely in the surrounding woods while keeping a close watch for any new threats. There was still much to be done, but Sam was patient. He knew the Mustang needed time, and he was willing to give it. As the days turned into weeks, the Mustang began to look like a different animal. Its coat became glossy, its muscles toned and strong again, and its eyes, once filled with fear and uncertainty, were now bright with life. Sam, too, had changed. The man who had come into the forest, unsure of what would happen next, was now a man with purpose, having taken on the responsibility of healing the Mustang, and in doing so, healing a part of himself. But as the Mustang's recovery progressed, Sam couldn't ignore the man who had caused all this pain, the farmer. He knew Elias was still out there, and he had to face the man who had chained the horse and abandoned it to the mercy of the forest. Sam felt a mix of anger and sadness when he thought about what had happened to the Mustang, and he couldn't let the farmer escape the consequences of his actions. Sam decided that the time had come to confront Elias, to make sure that no other animal would ever suffer the way the Mustang had. He knew that confronting the farmer wouldn't be easy. Elias was a man set in his ways, and justice would not come quickly. But Sam was resolute. He couldn't let Elias continue to harm animals just because he thought they were disposable. One afternoon, after a long journey through the forest, Sam reached Elias's farm. The place was as run down as he remembered, a stark contrast to the vibrant life Sam had been nurturing in the cave with the Mustang. Elias was working in the fields when Sam approached, his face grim but determined. Elias looked up, startled, as Sam approached. His eyes narrowed when he saw the man who had once taken the Mustang from him, the man who had freed it, now standing before him with a look of quiet intensity. "Sam, what do you want?" Elias asked, his voice cold and defensive. "I'm here to talk about the Mustang," Sam said, his voice calm but unwavering. Elias scoffed, his hands on his hips. "I did what I had to do. That horse wasn't worth keeping. I was doing what was best for it. For me, best for it?" Sam's voice hardened. "You chained it, left it in the forest, and let it face the dangers of the wild. No creature deserves that." Elias seemed to flinch at the accusation, but he quickly recovered, shaking his head as though he didn't fully understand the gravity of his actions. "I was just getting rid of a burden." "No," Sam said firmly. "You were abandoning a living, breathing being who deserved a chance to live, not suffer and die in a forest. I've seen what your actions have done. But that horse, it's alive and it's healing." Sam paused for a moment, looking Elias straight in the eyes. "It's time for you to take responsibility for what you did. No one should treat an animal the way you did. And if you keep acting like this, you'll find yourself alone, with no one willing to trust you or your intentions." Elias stood silent, as if unsure how to respond. But deep down, Sam could see the shift in his expression, a faint acknowledgement of guilt in his eyes. For the first time, Elias seemed to realize the enormity of what he had done. "I'll make sure you won't hurt any more animals," Sam said, his voice low but certain. "There are consequences for actions like yours. You can change, but only if you truly understand the damage you've done." Sam turned and walked away, knowing the farmer's path forward would be one of self-reflection. Whether or not Elias would change was out of Sam's hands, but he had made sure the message was clear. He couldn't force redemption, but he could ensure that justice, at least for the Mustang, had been served. As Sam walked back toward the cave, where the Mustang awaited his return, he felt a sense of peace settle over him. The journey hadn't been easy, but with the Mustang now safe, and the farmer forced to face the consequences of his actions, Sam knew that sometimes, redemption wasn't about changing others. It was about doing what was right, no matter the cost. The Mustang, its coat shining in the sun, greeted him as he arrived at the cave. Together, they had survived the worst, and together, they would continue to heal. As the weeks went by, the Mustang's transformation became nothing short of extraordinary. From the scared, frail animal that had been left to die in the forest, it had evolved into a symbol of strength, resilience, and hope. Each day, the Mustang grew more confident, its once tired legs now powerful and graceful. Its coat, once matted and dirty, had turned into a thick, gleaming hide. The scars that marred its body began to fade, and with each step, the Mustang seemed to shed not just the physical marks of its past, but the emotional weight as well. It was more than just a horse. This was a living testament to the power of care, kindness, and second chances. The Mustang had been given a new life, and every day it proved that healing was possible, no matter how broken one might seem. Sam had saved the Mustang from the edge of death, but it was the Mustang's own strength that had carried it through. They had both become survivors in their own right, two souls connected by the trials they had faced together. In the quiet mornings, Sam would lead the Mustang to the edge of the forest, and the two would stand there together, taking in the peace of their new life. There was a bond between them now that went beyond words, a bond forged in struggle and nurtured through love and patience. The Mustang was no longer a victim of its past, but a powerful, free spirit once again. And Sam, the man who had rescued it, found a deep sense of fulfillment in watching the Mustang run across the fields, as though it was reclaiming its birthright. The story of the Mustang is a powerful reminder of the strength found in second chances. Too often, We are quick to discard what we don't understand or what seems broken. But the Mustang's journey proves that with the right care, support, and love, anything can heal, even what seems beyond saving. The farmer's actions serve as a stark reminder that cruelty has consequences, but it also highlights the incredible impact that a single act of kindness can have. Sam's decision to rescue the Mustang wasn't about saving just an animal. It was about doing what was right, no matter the difficulty. It was about showing that compassion and love are far more powerful than neglect and cruelty. The Mustang's recovery wasn't just physical, it was emotional, too. And it wasn't just a victory for the horse, but for Sam as well. Through the process of healing the Mustang, Sam found his own redemption. It wasn't just about rescuing a horse. It was about finding healing for himself, too. The story reminds us that we all carry wounds, some visible, some hidden, but that through patience, care, and the willingness to fight for what's right, healing is always possible. If you believe in the power of second chances and the strength of kindness, share this story. Let the Mustang's transformation be a reminder that no one, no matter how broken, is beyond repair. Whether it's an animal, a person, or even ourselves, we all deserve a chance to heal and thrive. And just like Sam, you too can make a difference. Sometimes, it's the smallest act of compassion that can change everything. If you see an animal or someone in need, don't turn away. Step in, offer a helping hand, and be the change you want to see in the world. If this story touched your heart, leave a comment below and share how you've witnessed acts of kindness in your own life. Don't forget to like and subscribe to follow more heartwarming stories of hope and redemption. Together, we can spread the message that every life, no matter how lost, deserves a chance to begin again.